Support comes from Mosby Building Arts, a residential remodeling company guided by discipline, preparation, and attention to detail. Call Mosby.com.
From the St. Louis Public Radio Newsroom, this is The Gateway. It's Tuesday, February 17th. I'm Abby Larico. St. Louis is remembering a jazz and blues singer who made her mark across the region through recordings and decades of live performances.
All the stations that were oriented to the African American community, you'd find Marsha Evans.
Jazz musicians, family, and friends paid tribute to Marsha Evans, who died last week at 75 years old. That story's coming up after this news on The Gateway. Advocates from St. Louis and the Metro East met on the Martin Luther King Bridge Monday morning to protest Trump-backed immigration enforcement in the U.S. St. Louis Public Radio's Katie Grovich reports.
Clergy and progressive allies from both sides of the river sang and prayed together to rally support for immigrant families. Speakers mourned the deaths of Renee Macklin Good, Alex Preddy, and 6 other people who died in ICE custody this year. Joshua Betts attends New Paradise Missionary Baptist Church in Jennings. He says his pastor encouraged him to get involved with advocacy efforts.
They are our neighbors. If we are not showing them the same love and mercy and grace that God shows us, how can we expect to receive that?
Speakers expressed solidarity with protesters in Minneapolis and around the country. I'm Katie Grovich, St. Louis Public Radio.
A federal judge says the slot machine-type devices in many Missouri gas stations and convenience stores are illegal gambling devices. The ruling comes in a civil case between a company that owns and operates traditional arcade games like pinball machines and Torch Electronics, one of the biggest leasers of the slot machines. Operators call their machines no-chance gambling because there is a viewer that lets the player know if they're going to win. But the judge and a jury in a separate case said there is an element of chance, thus making the machines gambling devices under state law. Torch told the Missouri Independent it believes its devices are legal and will appeal. Kansas City officials have said such machines have caused a spike in crime around stores where they operate. Mandatory car safety inspections in Missouri could be a thing of the past. Missouri House members voted 104 to 43 on Monday to pass legislation that removes car and truck inspection requirements. The bill now goes to the Senate. Republican Representative Ann Kelly is the sponsor of the bill. She said on the floor that lawmakers must acknowledge the advancement in tech that can flag possible safety issues.
This evolution in technology diminishes the necessity of traditional inspections, which were designed for a different era of vehicle safety.
4 Democrats voted in favor of the bill, but most were against it, saying it would make the roads less safe in Missouri. There's a growing crisis within Missouri's criminal justice system, according to some lawmakers in Jefferson City. The backlog of people who need mental health evaluations before they can stand trial in court. St. Louis Public Radio's Hiba Ahmed has details.
Over 500 people accused of a crime by the state are waiting for mental health evaluations before their cases can move forward. Annie Legomsky is the director of client advocacy for the Missouri Public Defender's Office. She spoke yesterday about this issue on St. Louis on the Air.
One of the barriers is that the folks that are in these positions that are going through this process are poor and extremely mentally ill. And then by the time they get to this point of the process, they've probably gotten worse by sitting in the jail and deteriorating.
Governor Mike Kehoe's budget calls for an additional $6 million to address the issue, but some lawmakers question whether that's enough. I'm Hiba Ahmed, St. Louis Public Radio.
The Missouri House has approved legislation targeting anti-Semitism in K-12 schools and on college campuses. The bill adds the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism into school codes of conduct. It reads in part, quote, "Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews." Proponents say it provides clarity on the term for schools that lack guidelines. Those against the legislation say the definition isn't clear and will shut down debate about Israel and Palestine. The bill also requires the State Board of Education to provide an annual report on anti-Semitic actions to the state legislature. It passed 109 to 21 and now goes to the Senate for consideration, where it died last year. St. Louis City SC is making changes to what banners and flags can be flown at Energizer Park this season, and fan-led supporters groups are not happy about it. The groups say they will not be allowed to bring Black Lives Matter flags and trans pride banners that say "Love Always Wins" to the stadium this season. They were allowed to display them during the first 3 seasons of the club's time in Major League Soccer. Supporters groups including St. Louis City Punks, Fleur de Noise, and STL Santos all posted statements to their social media pages. They say the policy change contradicts the principles and values of inclusion that the club was founded on. Neither City SC nor MLS have responded to requests for comment. City SC opens its season this Saturday at home against Charlotte FC. A co-founder of the legendary Blueberry Hill Restaurant and Music Club in University City has died. Linda Edwards was known for her distinctive window installations at the club. St. Louis Public Radio's Jeremy Goodwin has more.
One of Linda Edwards' varied window designs might have featured a cheerfully gruesome dentist. Another, a more sentimental holiday message. They sometimes included live performers, and pedestrians might crowd the sidewalk for a peek at a newly installed display. Linda Edwards' husband, Joe, says they loved watching passersby react to her windows.
I got the most enjoyment out of 6 people in a family walking down, and one would happen to see it, and they would call the other ones back and say, "Gosh, you have to see this. You have to see this."
Linda Edwards published a coffee table book documenting her window designs in 2024. In addition to her husband, Joe, she leaves daughters Christine and Hope Edwards, sister Pat Kennedy, and several dear friends. Edwards was 78. I'm Jeremy Goodwin, St. Louis Public Radio.
A major voice in the St. Louis blues and jazz community has left the stage. Marsha Evans, whose voice could be heard for decades in the region, has died. She was 75. As St. Louis Public Radio's Chad Davis reports, musicians and friends remember Evans for her contributions to the local music scene and beyond.
The song Wall to Wall by Atlanta rapper and Migos member Quavo begins with a soul sample that may be obscure to most people.
Welcome to Club Rocket Power, where every night is baked potato loaded. Wall to wall, man.
That sample is from the 1971 song Would You Rather by St. Louis group The Georgettes.
Would you rather?
And those lead vocals, that's Marsha Evans. In a 2024 interview with St. Louis on the Air, Evans said she was excited to hear the record repackaged decades later.
One of the guys, Quavo, just selected our song and put it on there. So that song means a lot to me for that and so many other reasons, of course.
That's just one chapter in Evans' life. For the past week, jazz and blues musicians have shared memories of Evans since she died last week, sending shockwaves throughout the St. Louis music community. Hailing from a musical family, Evans' mother, Justine Bowler, was one of the first black women to perform at the Muni. Evans and her sister Cheryl Bowler Slaughter were the first black children to perform at what was then known as the Kiel Opera House. Since then, her music journey never stopped. Bernie Hayes is founder of the National Black Radio Hall of Fame. He says she was always going to radio stations as a teenager, sometimes with a cassette in hand, other times just to introduce herself.
All the stations that were oriented to the African-American community, you'd find Marsha Evans, and with the disc jockeys.
Evans performed with and started groups all her life, recording other songs with the Georgettes like Hard Hard. Hayes said St. Louis jazz saxophonist Oliver Sane took Evans under his wing in the late 60s and early 70s. She also performed background vocals for soul singer Fontella Bass. Evans married bassist Jimmy Hines. Their band, The Coalition, could be heard performing blues and soul records throughout the region and were regulars at the 1860 Saloon. Dennis Brock is a guitarist who would often join The Coalition. He remembers Evans as a perfectionist.
You know, if you play behind Marsha, you had to have your stuff right because she wanted her music right, because she wanted to present it to the audience the way she liked to do it.
That was true in early February when she performed for a birthday party at the Bridgeton Recreational Center. Don Cook is a founder of the Jazz Edge Orchestra and played with Evans that day. He says her show was energetic, lively, and intimate.
She even went up to the front and talked, took the mic, went up to the front and did some things. So it was typical Marsha.
Cook says he didn't realize that would be the last time he would see her. Blues music is what gave Evans life. She said it herself during a 2018 interview with St. Louis Public Radio.
You're pouring your life into, 3 or 4 minutes of musical expression. Your innermost emotions, all of the pain you felt on any particular day or for a number of months or years.
Evans is survived by her daughter Chris White and her son-in-law Darren White, and grandsons Nathan and Nicholas White. I'm Chad Davis, St. Louis Public Radio.
Our Jessica Rogan edited that piece. You can hear more about Evans' life on St. Louis on the Air at noon and 7 o'clock today.
Would you rather?
The Gateway is a production of St. Louis Public Radio, a listener-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis. Theme music by Ryan McNeely of Adult Fur, but right now, more Would You Rather by the Georgettes. I'm Abby Larico, and from the St. Louis Public Radio Newsroom, thanks for listening to The Gateway.
Or would it be?